But what does that actually mean? Treat them any different? Like, is it time-wise you're giving them less time? Is it the way you're speaking to them? Are you rude and abrupt because they're spending less? Because that won't be right in either case.
In some service businesses, you have customers that you can lose money from because they can be they're hard to deal with.
Yeah.
They've got higher expectations. When you've got other customers who they exactly know what they're doing. So not all customers potentially are equal in that aspect. Yes, you've got
Very true.
So there's an element of, you could have a tadpole customer, small customer that can become, a very large customer.
Yeah.
But if you're a service-layer business, you can be in a position where some customers are draining.
Yeah. 100%. But equally, you might have the same service being provided to two different customers.
Yeah.
One isn't more or less. The one customer, his income is low, so you've given him a different price.
Yeah.
The other customer, his income is 100 times more, so your price reflects that. Is that even fair?
I'll give you a funny story. I worked in banking for 10 years and we had this exact challenge in one of the big banks. I won't mention which one. They had a segment of customers that were just low profit, low value customers. So what they did is they reclassified them as, let's say, for example, business direct customers. That wasn't the name, but business direct customers. They gave them a brand new phone number, new points of contact, and they made that service the worst possible service ever, to the point they would get pissed off and they would actually leave the bank. So they left on their own accord, so they didn't get angry at the bank, So that was quite interesting.
Yeah. Okay. There's another thing that I want to try and up the pace a little bit on these, if I may. So a little bit shorter, sharper, punchier. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Many business owners talk about the fact that I can't delegate this to anybody else. The best person for that job is myself, and it's going to take me too long, too much time, too much effort to explain this job to anybody else. What's your general view on that thought?
Excellent. The one big mistake a lot of business owners do is they've got 100% motivation. When they bring in a new employee or delegate to an employee, they expect that employee to have the same level of motivation. That will never happen. The most you can expect an employee to have in terms of motivation is even if they've got 50% of the motivation that I've got, I've won the day. That's a huge thing. And as I said, the big mistake a lot of people make is they just think everyone should be just as motivated as them. That's never going to happen.
Okay, but say not motivation yet, but talk about actually knowledge or skills. I can't, I can do that job better than anybody else. There's no point me teaching somebody else. So even if it's not motivation, it's just the ability to do that job. I'm not going to train somebody.
I've been guilty of that because there have been times, for example, if I've dealt with the clients, I understand their needs. I know what needs to be produced for them. If I give it to somebody else to do, I'm thinking, well, it's going to cost me money. It's going to take my time, explain to them. By the time I've explained to them, I would have done it myself anyway, but I need to do it. But then I don't find myself having the time to do it as quickly as I'd like to be getting to do it. It's a catch-22. What came first, chicken or the egg? Can't answer it.
So let's talk about financials.
Yep.
When we talk about business owners, or you've seen it on Dragon's Den, the business owner says, I'm the ideas man, but the financials is the accountant, or we've got a financial person. What's your general view in terms of anybody who maybe doesn't have their financials on their fingertips?
I'm one of those guys. There's only two figures I look at: sales and net profit.
Okay.
Couldn't care less about all of the other metrics and financials, EBITDA and all this and that. It's not even worth my time. Is a business making money? Are we making profit? That's the only two metrics I look at.
Okay. Majid, thoughts on financials?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. Probably, I don't need my figures are the same as his, but I'm practically the same. I'd like to understand what the accounting terms, different ones, mean, because at the end of the day, at the end of the year, you're going to submit your accounts. You need to sign it off, so you need to understand what you're signing off.
Okay.
From a legal perspective, I'd say that's important. I think the rest of the thing, it's if you've got somebody whose expertise is in accounting, fine. Otherwise, same as Ajmal.
Okay. So many people look at accounts and they're about the history, what's happened. How involved should a business owner be in terms of the current and the future, in terms of budgeting, forecasting, and potentially planning? So thoughts there.
I've got a golden nugget for this.
Yeah.
A business owner, so I run my business, I can run my... If the money tap is turned off today, there should be enough money in the bank to keep the lights on for a full year.
Full year.
Full year. So that there's enough money to pay the bills, the wages for a full year.
Without any income coming in.
Correct. Yeah, so every business should have that buffer. And the big mistake a lot of people make is they've got money in the bank, it gets spent, and if circumstances change over here, they're in trouble. This is just good old-fashioned sort of Desi style business planning, financial planning for a business.
Okay. Sort of a roadmap for a whole year, so you can carry on in your business without any form of income. Is that a metric that you prescribe to, Majid, or is that something you've come across before?
Accidentally, I didn't do it on purpose, but I've happened to fall in that bracket. But the question which you were asking in relation to retrospective analysis and future planning, I think already the business owner is future planning, even because the accounts that your accountant produces for you usually more than a year and a half old by the time it's ready for submission. So by that time, you should already have, because if you're the business owner, you obviously know what's in your account. For you to be able to understand, you will already have done your calculations in your mind to say, okay, this is how much I usually get going out, this is how much is usually coming in, this is what it is, so this is how much I've got to play with. Let's do this is what I can plan for. I think most people who are astute would be already ready for that.
Safaraz, I've never looked ahead from an accounting point of view. I've always looked ahead from a customer sales point of view, marketing point of view. Never have I thought, right, what are my accounts going to look like for the next year? I don't look at those metrics.
Number of branches, number of people, other metrics.
Customer satisfaction, like all of that type of stuff.
Okay. Have you come across NPVs? So when you're talking about, customer metrics, and you're talking about, so different levels of measuring customers, because there's so many numbers that you can put in. I mean, you're obviously from a consultancy background. There's KPIs, there's other metrics and so forth, and you can sort of get to a position. I know you've got two numbers in your business, but you can be very numbers driven. And
you can overdo it. I think keep it simple. You can overdo it. That's okay if you've got a team, a huge office, and lots of people there crunching all these different metrics and numbers. But for a lot of sort of business owners, small, medium enterprises, they don't have that luxury where they've got people sat there at computers and plodding away with the numbers. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and it depends on what the business is involved in.
Or the size of it.
Yeah, or the size of it. Yeah. And is there a need to crunch the numbers? Yeah. So some businesses, it might be. If you're working with financials all the time, just finances, the business is financial. You're selling financial services, you're receiving funds. Then it's different. Yeah. But when you're working as a service provider or a product provider, it's going to be a little bit different.
Okay. Somebody said the fact that ideas is not the issue. We've got ideas coming through our noses and our heads and so forth. The ideas are too plenty. There's too many ideas. Yeah. For us, it's about execution. We've got somebody else who's saying, we need good ideas. So where are you in terms of ideas and executing and execution?
Yeah, I've got an idea. Majid and I, we're going to set up a football club and we're going to win the Champions League.
Yeah,
is that good? High five. We're going to do that. That's great.
So
the idea is nothing without the idea is 1%. Execution is 99%.
It's all in the execution.
Yeah,
100%. You're not even a business if you've never executed anything.
Yeah.
And we'll sell you a season ticket for our new club.
Okay. I've had business owners who basically say, everybody here, they're doing a job. It's not a career. I can't sell them the career in retail. I can't sell them career doing this work. It's a job for them. I can make it a little bit easier. I can give them a lifelong job, but it's not a career. So any thoughts in terms of what's a job and what's a career, and how do you get somebody to think this is my career?
I think it's up to the individual to determine.
And it is important.
This is up to the individual to decide whether it's going to be a career for them or if it's just a job for them. That's not something an employer always decides. If somebody's happy doing what they're doing, let's just say somebody who works in a supermarket, works on a till every day, for them, that might be the lifeline to something else that they're doing. That's their career. Job done. Nothing more needed, right? So that's what is a career. Is career something that you progress in life with, right? It travels with you in life. A job is perceived as something you're doing temporarily or something just to fill the gaps. So a career is something, if you're happy, if the man or the woman or whoever he is or she is happy doing what they're doing, I've seen people like that. People in the early 20s started a job and they're still there 20, 25, 30 years later. Yeah. That's for them, it's their career. They'll treat it professionally. they'll go and treat it. Other people might come and say, "Why are you treating it so seriously?" For them, it's their risk, it's their income, it's halal, it's permissible, it's kosher, it's all the value propositions in there for them, and that's it. That's good enough.
Okay, career or job? Any thoughts on that in terms of the mindset of somebody?
Career or
a job. So, for example, as an employer, same question, but slightly differently asked here. So, as an employer, we want our individuals to stay with us. We want them to treat their work with respect, and it's got to be more than a job. Yeah, that's my view. It's got to be more than a job. It can't be, that's where they start thinking the fact that I've got to add value.
Yeah.
There's growth here. There's a future here. There's prospects here. It doesn't have to be necessarily, progression every single month or every single game, but there's an element of stability here.
Yeah.
And for me, this is my career. Whether it's retail, whether it's, frontline or whatever. How do you get that mindset where somebody doesn't think it's just a job? It's a career. I'm a barista. It's my career. I'm a food delivery driver. That's my career.
I think for me it's very easy. As a growing business, it's always good to show the employees the next step, and one of the big motivating factors is money. And even in the big consultancies that I worked in, every 2 years there was a promotion. You were on this career path, this fast track career path, and that keeps you in the job and it keeps you motivated. And the fact that it's well incentivized and there's always a pay salary at the next promotion point is a big plus for keeping people in place. For keeping
pathway
people,
to grow.
Pathway.
Asaf?
Yeah,
You end up having a pathway to grow.
Absolutely. So I've come across people who say basically it's very difficult to retain people. Retention is not something that I can manage, I can control. That's about the individual, whether they're going to stay here or so forth. I can't actively look at retention strategies. I can't actively look at retaining my staff. And it's not a metric that I should look at. Any thoughts in terms of staff retention?
Yes, if you can imagine a plant, and you need to have your people growing in your organization. And if you can imagine a plant, if the soil is dry, it's got no nutrients and no water, the environment is bad for that plant to grow. And that's what a business owner needs to do. You need to make sure that your business environment is such that allows the individual to grow. And if they can see they can grow in your organization, there's a higher chance that they'll stay.
Okay. Most small businesses don't see the need for formal structured meetings. We don't need to meet because we talk in the car. We're communicating every day. We're WhatsApping or we're sending. We don't need a formal structure. What advice would you say to those generally small businesses in terms of formality of sitting down and having structured formal meetings?
You want to go first?
Carry on. If it's not for you, it's not for you. As long as you got the main stuff covered, carry on.
You wouldn't encourage them to?
Not necessarily. I've seen the downfall of that. Have you seen some of the people who work in real hard conditions and harsh conditions? The last thing they want to do is have a formal meeting about something. They just want to, because I've seen both sides. I've been on sites where I've seen death, right? That kind of harsh scenario. You don't. No. Simple answer is no. I won't encourage them. As long as they've got the main stuff dotted the I's and ticked off the T's, the legal stuff, you carry on. If that's what works for you, having a chat in the car on the way home, go for it.
I'm a big fan of meetings. I'm a big fan of formal meetings because no matter what size of team it is, it's nice to stop, pause, and celebrate. And we have a team meeting. Even when my business was tiny, we had a team meeting every single week. And in that meeting, we discussed the issues and the successes and the plan for the next week. It just meant everyone was aligned and they knew they had a very clear idea of the direction in which we were heading. Big fan.
Okay. If somebody says, we do not like to fire any team members because we see that as a failure on us, your thoughts on that?
You've got to, if they're toxic, you've got to fire the toxic employees today, because if you don't, you're sending out all the wrong message to your A players that you as a leader are weak and you're tolerating this toxic behavior. You'll piss the people that are toxic off, and you'll piss off your A players, and that's bad for business. Get rid of them straight away.
If somebody says we hire fast and sack fast as well, fire fast.
Yep.
What's your thoughts on that?
I think if they're not fit for the job, it's the right thing. The worst thing that a business can't afford to carry passengers.
Any thoughts on that, Majid, in terms of hiring and firing and so forth? Hire slow or hire fast and sack fast, or general thoughts in terms of.
Well, as long as you fulfilled your legal obligations, right? Then it's entirely up to you. You don't want to have a team is like the cogs in a clock. If one of them breaks down, you've got to replace it. Yeah. Otherwise, the whole clock breaks down. Yeah. It won't tell you the right time. It might tell you the right time twice in a day, as some people say, but that's about it.
Okay. If somebody says that, we don't really need professional training and development, all our training is done through sitting with Ahmed or sitting with Nelly or sitting wherever, by showing people, as opposed to structured formal training processes. Any pros and cons? I mean, you both are professional people. You've gone through many training sessions yourself. You're trainers yourself as well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of external trainers. I think it's definitely good to get the team out into a new environment, new faces, and get taught from, the professionals. I think it can only enhance your work environment.
Yeah, take them a little bit away from the core day-to-day and put them in a different environment.
Yeah, I think for the day-to-day stuff, depends on the competence of this Ahmed who's doing the training internally. If they've got the relevant experience and knowledge and expertise to be able to part that with that knowledge, fine. But I'm also in agreement, like Ajmal said, to get, maybe not always send people out to training. If that can be done, excellent. But get an external trainer to come in. Because there's a saying in Punjabi, Ghar da peer ola honda hai, that the saint of the home is undervalued because he's from the home. I know him, right? So
that's a good one. I like that.
But when you got somebody from the outside coming in to do something, I can go into client's place and I can tell them off, but they listen to me, the employees will, but not their own boss. Yeah, that's the difference.
Can I just extend on that point? I'm just going to cut in here. I got asked at the business show. A lady put up her hand and says, and she said, "Do your kids know that how lucky they are to have such a great dad?" And I said, "No, they just think I'm an old guy who hasn't got a clue and is really uncool." You're right. That's a great point.
That's it. That's what it comes down to.
Okay. Somebody says, policies and procedures, systems and processes are all fine on paper, but in reality, that's not how we do things.
I've seen both sides to that because I write policies and procedures, and I've seen them being implemented, and I've seen them not being implemented. What do you want me to say?
I think as a growing business, you've got to have systems, processes, policies, procedures in place. If you're running a small team, it's easy to manage locally, but if you're running a growing business, absolutely fundamental.
And that's what forms a part of the culture.
Culture, yeah, exactly.
If they're not there, then there is no culture.
Okay, so let's break that down. So you got your policies and procedures, and you got your systems and processes. Slightly different. So we need to talk about systems and processes. How do you define systems and processes in an organization?
Yeah, I love systems and processes. Right, systems. Every single task in my business has got a system and a process and a training manual around it. What that does is you train people up, then you can move them up the ladder and you bring someone else in to fill that role. There's a system, training, procedure in place. You just plug them in that and they perform to the exact same standards. That's how we've grown our business. Okay. So the customer service or product is never impacted because of the systems and processes in place.
Somebody says, I don't need to recruit talented people. I just need to recruit people who can follow a system and a process. Agree, disagree, middle of the road.
It depends on the role for which you're recruiting them for. Yeah. If that role requires a lot of autonomy and you ideally want to give them autonomy to become one of the next leaders, you need them to have some of that doing some thinking for themselves and not just relying on just following certain commands, because then you're just employing a robot. But some jobs require that. Some jobs require the systematic approach of somebody following a procedure of certain kind and a system. Just stick with that, and you'll do a good job. Depends on the role.
Okay. In terms of recruitment, interviewing, if somebody says, I've got my basic structured questions which I've downloaded from ChatGPT or whatever the case is, and that's all I ask, and this is my interviews, structured, systematic process, and then somebody else says, you know what, I don't have structured interviews. I want to get to know the person. What's your general thoughts in terms of interviewing, recruiting the right talent?
Okay, so I was, for a period of time, I was a recruitment manager at Accenture, which is one of the largest consultancies in the world. And they had, like, it was a 20-point questionnaire, and every single question was scored 1 to 5. Yeah. I think for a large company,
that's the right
you can't rely on the individual to make all of these assessments. You have to have a prescribed method. Yeah. But I think for a smaller business, you can learn a lot just by the way someone walks in through the door, their eye contact, their handshake, their body language, the way they're interacting, the way they're asking questions. You can learn a lot about that.
Okay. I think there's a middle path as well, where you'd have a bit of both.
Yeah,
I have to interview quite regularly for a school, been on the governing board for staff. If you don't ask the same question from the other staff members or people, the interviewees, then it could be seen as unfair.
Yeah.
But then you also have to make those judgments personally to see, well, how are they interacting? How is their handshake? How confidently did they answer that question? Did they answer it correctly?
Okay. So in terms of your good self, specifically yourself, your interviewing style, talk to us about that generally. What so this is not necessarily a quick one.
Right.
Just want to get to know in terms of your style of
very, very informal, to the point where I don't even say this is an interview. Why don't you pop down for a chat, just an informal chat? And I make sure I mention the word informal. Chat. And I think I'm not really comfortable sitting there and writing things out, wearing a suit. I just want to sort of chill out. And I want to learn more about the individual. So it's almost like a two-way conversation. And I think that's where you can learn much more about the individual. So that's my style, very informal.
Okay. And in terms of your management team, is that, do you trust their gut instinct, or do you say, you know what, we need to follow a process in terms of, how would you recruit the next level?
I'll leave it to the managers to recruit. And again, they've worked with me for some time now, sometimes in many cases, many, many years. So I'm at the point now where I trust their judgment. They know enough about me, the culture, the expectations, and I trust them to get on with it. Okay.
Majid, in terms of recruiting, obviously you're recruiting at a sort of a school governor level. I would say it's prescribed in terms of, and then there's also a panel recruitment. You're not going to invite them for an informal chat. It's going to be an interview. It's going to be a structured interview. There's going to be panel members and so forth. What are your views in terms of adopting that for a possibly smaller business? That panel, learning from corporate governance, learning from others, public sector, in terms of adopting that to a small business?
I'd say it depends on the environment in which they'll be working. So if it is a corporate, even albeit a small one, if it's a formal organization, let's just say it's a legal firm, right? Yeah. Law firm. And everything has to be by the book, and it's a formal working environment, right? It's not a warehouse of any kind. And so the demeanor of the people working within that environment is going to be different to the demeanor of people who are working in a warehouse, as an example. So depending on the environment they're going to be working in, you have to be accustomed to that kind of style of communicating. That doesn't mean to say you're always so informal that you have to be in a suit and a tie. Like Ajmal said, I agree with the approach of having an informal conversation. Even with the school example that you referred to, they do have like an open day where they can come and have a look around the school. So that gives them a chance to look at the school, and it gives the teachers or the head teachers a chance to have a catch up or a chat with the applicant informally.
So, Ajmal, you spoke about certain metrics. EBITDA is one. People talk about value of a business. They talk about metrics and so forth. And these are individuals who've got maybe a marketing plan. They talk about being end in mind and so forth. And they talk about their exiting businesses and so forth. If you're not doing that as an entrepreneur, what in terms of your planning, where is that in terms of how are you setting your measurables? Because measurables are all about things that you can relate to other businesses. One key measure is that KPI of EBITDA and many others.
Yeah, so the metrics I'm looking at is sales and net profit per store, and then multiples of stores. So I'm looking at growing the branch network, and that's how we're going to value the business. And then you value the business at that point based on, and there's a number of ways of valuing it. You base it on 4 times net profit or 5 times net profit. It depends. There's so many different ways of valuing a business. So for me, it's sales, net profit, number of stores. And then it's a multiplier of that.
Okay. A lot of people talk about currently acquisitions, growth by acquisition as opposed to organic growth. There's no right or wrongs, but talk to me about your views on pros and cons.
So we're actually setting up Boss Pizza to be acquired. So that's that is the ultimate plan. I'm going to grow the business, and I'm going to retire when I'm 60, which is 10 years away. So I'm going to grow the business and sell the business in 10 years from now.
Maybe to your enemy.
To the
second and the third who are struggling a little bit.
So we took on investment when we started. We got 100,000, which valued the business up for 5%, which valued the business at 2 million. Next year, we're going to be going through another round of investment, and the idea is I don't need that investment, but I want that investment, because in 5 years' time, 3 years' time, I want to be knocking in the doors of the VCs and say, right, here's a brand that we've built. Now, what I want to do now is I need 20, 30 million pounds to develop some amazing technology that I've got the blueprint for, and we want to roll out international. So that's the game that we're playing, the sort of long-term big growth of this brand.
Okay. Majid, organic growth, acquisition growth by slow, which is generally organic, or growth in terms of actually maybe acquiring somebody else, maybe merging with somebody else.
Both have their pros and cons.
Yeah.
Organic, it keeps you purer in the market. You understand I'm looking from a consultancy or a service-based industry here. You understand your clients, you understand who you've interacted with, and you understand what the psyche is with those clients, X, Y, and Z. When you acquire somebody else's business, you're going to potentially come across some baggage that comes with it. It's like marrying somebody for a second time, or getting another new wife or a new husband or something. Do they already have kids? Do they have other issues? Do they have other, you just don't know what you're getting yourself involved with. You can have a look at the numbers, but they don't tell you everything. Then now with the social media and electronic media, what about reputational risk management, and what kind of metrics are you going to check with that? How are businesses, what is their sentiment or feeling about this business within the community or within the industry? Those kinds of things. There's so many unknowns that both has pros and cons. If you can find a good one at a good price, and it comes with a portfolio of income that's worth taking the risk for, go for it. If not, growth, depending again on several other variables, but no straight answer here.
Okay. I met a young person who said to me, gone are the days where you can plan the 5 years or have a 5-year plan. You used to be in a position where you could do a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, because things moved quite slow. We can't do that anymore. We've got to be agile. We've got to be a bit more responsive, and we have a vision, but business planning is quite difficult, quite hard, nearly impossible. Any views on that?
I think for me, the fundamentals of business remain the same. I think the environment does seem to be changing, especially like even at a macro political level. The tax changes, regulation. It seems to be getting more and more and more difficult to run a business. I'm just casting my mind back to when my dad ran a business many years ago. Things were quite simple back then, and now there's so many different. There's so much red tape, bureaucracy, intervention from local authority at every level. It just seems to be much more difficult. So planning a business now, I think, and with the rise of social media, your business could explode overnight. So I think the good old-fashioned slow pace of planning and growth, that might be out the window. I think with social media now, it could be a lot faster.
Yeah.
Okay. Slow and steady growth is for the weak. Somebody said that to me a little while back. I know everybody's got their own view, but slow and steady work is for the weak. You need to be more ambitious. There's no right or wrong in this, because it is about the individual lifestyle, business, and so forth. But there's a lot of people who have this judgment, don't they, to say this is right. You know, our parents did it. This is right. This is wrong, and so forth. And we've got to be a little bit more open-minded on that. So it's quite obvious the fact that there is no right or wrong on that. But any thoughts, any words of wisdom in terms of general?
What did you say? Slow and steady.
So, yeah, people said that. Yeah.
I'll add to that. Very slow and steady at the start. When you're building the foundation, make sure that foundation for your business is rock solid. Spend the maximum amount of time making sure you're solid, your foundation is solid. Then when you're ready to scale, then that would allow you to grow fast. Slow and steady to start, then you can really accelerate it year 3, year 4.
I would agree with that.